Marketing in a post-cookie landscape is effectively what we were tasked with chatting about. Oh, here comes the microphone without the panellists. Maybe just pop it on the chair. On the chair. Thanks. Marketing in a post-cookie landscape is what we were tasked with chatting about. I want to connect the dots with some of the things that have already been brought up, right? You know, the fireside chat between Lee and Kieran touched on, you know, big tectonic shifting trends that happen in the industry and how sometimes they come and go. Sometimes they make a major impact on the world of marketing and advertising. Of course, at ExchangeWire, we've been arguing for a long time that cookie deprecation is one of those. That actually, this is an environment where we need to move to an authenticated, logged-in environment from a data perspective, and that's going to be critically important for both the buy and the sell side. So I guess I want to get started by just understanding from each of your perspectives what that conversation is looking like together with your clients, Madelin for you, and Timmy within your business from your perspective, running a big publisher. And I also want to understand how prepared you feel that you individually are within your organisations and how prepared you feel that your clients are. So Madelin, let's kick off with you. You've only just come back from 8 days holiday. I'm sure this is a conversation you can't wait to get.
No, I can't. I was talking to Rachel last week when I was in Spain, and I was saying it's very difficult to come back from spending 9 days overseas, especially in San Sebastian. But luckily, we can come back to this conversation. So that is a very big question to try and answer. And I think when we talk about cookie deprecation, we think about it in terms of what does that mean for targeting? What does that mean for measurement? But realistically, if we take a step back and think about what does that actually mean for us as an industry? Why should we care about cookie deprecation? And I think about ATS last year, and a lot of the panellists and a lot of the discussions were talking about the way we plan campaigns, the way we buy campaigns, the way we measure campaigns, and pretty much everyone got on stage and spoke about, oh, it's around, you know, CPAs and clicks, and oh, we talk about click-through rates, but we shouldn't, but we do anyway because what else is there? And so the opportunity around cookie deprecation isn't just around, oh, now we can use first-party data, or now we're going to optimize differently. Realistically, it is, you know, a seismic shift and an opportunity for us to reset the way that we approach strategy, planning, the way we talk about the fundamental principles of media planning with our clients, which is not to say, oh, we're going to target XYZ segments. It's to be able to truly understand how media works. And that's not about just, you know, transacting a conversion on a website. It's truly about understanding how we can use media to grow brands, to gather insights, and to truly, help to work with clients. So for me, cookie deprecation, and I think at IPG, the way that we're viewing that is that opportunity to completely shift that conversation away from conversions, away from bottom funnel performance, and to use that as an opportunity to completely reset. And that's reflected in the way that our brands are repositioning themselves, you know, very much Initiative have repositioned themselves in the last 18 months to talk about fame and flow, which fundamentally talks to a completely new set of metrics, really designed to explore the way that marketing works. And then we also are helping to work with our clients around different solutions to help them understand and measure how prepared they really are to embrace a cookieless future. So that is how we're approaching that at IPG from an industry and a client perspective.
So, Timmy, I want you to share your insights with us on how you're approaching things at South China Morning Post. In my opener, I really mentioned when in strong on the opportunity for publishers to really focus on sophisticated first-party data infrastructure. So I want to hear about what you guys are up to. But before I do that, I want to remind everyone there's actually a live poll available in your app for this panel session. I don't know if we've got the polling question. Yeah, could we just show question? This is because no one's voted yet. The question is, has the pushback on cookie deprecation impacted your strategy? You've got a couple of options there. If you want to all go ahead and vote, we will then check back in at the end of the panel session to see what the results are. So just, that's not 100% of people totally ready at the moment, but we'll check back in on that. Right, Timmy.
Thank you. I think it's kind of good to hear where from like an agency perspective, being able to move towards understanding media as kind of the take. I think for a long time, publishers have been on the back foot We've pretty much listened to what everyone has been doing and pretty much now trying to position where our revenue comes from. For us, it was understanding our media to a T, taking a strategy that made us go 4 years ago, let's move away from third-party data, let's focus on first-party. So for us, it was a journey that started a while back. It was a journey that we thought was needed just because we wanted control over everything we do. And it was a case of how do we take back power in-house, and how do we get brands to understand that that relationship needs to be a lot closer than having a lot of players, which we did have, and we still, in some cases, have in that food chain. So from a first-party point of view, like the deprecation of cookies for us was, I don't want to say a good thing, but we kind of saw that coming, and it was, how do we understand the brand a lot better? How do we build loyalty between the people who actually come to engage with the brand? Why do they come? Yes, we need to make a revenue, but we want them to also stick. So how do we create content from a news point of view that makes our readers come back? From an advertising point of view, how do I create a real estate that doesn't piss them off and make them go? And then from a data collection point, how do I make all that sticky in terms of understanding the events, understanding segmentation? Therefore, I can actually, I won't use the word cluster, but pretty much understand those different audiences and be able to work around the nuances of who they are and why they come to us, and then activate campaigns against them in a way where it is all compliant, it is all pretty much making sure that user feels respected. A lot of clients, again, the scare is when you're looking at CPAs and CPCs, we've got a lot of metrics that we've always had. The one thing that a lot of people kind of forget is the environment you're in. And this has kind of made a lot of people take a step back to go, okay, we're either going to curate a list of 5 publishers we're going to work with, but it brought back that loyalty into where do I want to be, how do I associate my brand to that, which for us for the very first time is a case where publishers now feel like we are in control of, we own the data, you kind of need us in that conversation. So it's been a good shift for us where we're pretty much now working close to the agencies and partners to kind of understand what media plans should look like, what part do we play, and how we actually help you activate against that.
And is that having the benefit of shortening that advertising value chain and bringing you much closer to agency folks and to brands? You're laughing.
From a money standpoint, yes. There's so many surveys you've seen, like we pretty much, you have a lot of players in the chain, everyone takes $1, when it gets to you, it's pretty much not what you thought. So from a publisher's point of view, if you just look at revenue, you're like 100% yes, and which for us is crucial. But most importantly, if I put on like a media planner / trying to do my job properly, we actually get closer to the agencies to go, what do you want to achieve from this campaign, right? We've gone away from you're kind of getting emails where you just get told, we want reach, and it's like, okay, really? And it's trying to understand, okay, what you're trying to achieve, who you're trying to hit, and what are your engagement metrics that actually matter outside of just what's the reach in this campaign. So for us, yes, we make a lot more money, which is great, but we actually have a closer relationships to the brands and the clients that gives us a better understanding of who you are and what you're trying to affiliate with and how we can help you plan that.
Is this a familiar story on your side of the fence, Madelin? Are you able to have these conversations with clients? Are some of your colleagues able to have these granular conversations with clients and say, look, we're taking you on a journey away from the metrics we have been relying on as an industry for a long time into a slightly different phase. It's going to bring you closer to your intended audience. Is that what's happening on the agency side of the fence?
Yeah, I think it's just as Timmy said, it's about understanding what are you actually trying to achieve in a campaign? Because, okay, let's say reach. It's actually not reach. You're not trying to achieve reach. You're trying to achieve sales. You're trying to achieve people deepening their engagement with you as a brand. And I think it's really about us unpacking ultimately what are your senior stakeholders, investors? What does your C-suite look at? What is really the impact of this? Because a lot of the time, we get these investments, we run these campaigns, especially when we look at a performance campaign, we'll all pat each other on the back. It'll be, really successful. Wow, we drove our CPV down by 25%. But realistically, is that actually adding anything to the bottom line? So when we talk about metrics, when we talk about success and planning campaigns and helping businesses grow, it's really important, and the conversation that we need to have is understanding, not getting lost in the volume of metrics that we have. Sure, what metrics are useful to us to understand that a campaign is just doing what it's supposed to do? But beyond that, what metrics do we use to really understand whether a campaign is helping us to grow? What's the impact? What's the sentiment? How does that really help to drive revenue, not just how do we use performance marketing to deliver more retargeting, to take credit for transactions that are probably going to happen anyway and feel good at the moment, but ultimately when we look at what we're delivering over a 12-month period, the results ultimately aren't there. So yes, that is very much a conversation that we're having, and fundamentally helping to prioritize the metrics we should look at and we can look at, and the other things that exist and we can measure, but ultimately we know don't really drive value.
And there's a stronger client appetite for these conversations, even if it is a harder, a more difficult form of advertising and marketing?
Honestly?
Yes,
maybe.
please.
Look, the reality is, and I think this is a APAC nuance as compared to some of the other markets, and we were just talking about this morning. One of the challenges that we always have in APAC is you have more fragmentation, you have more campaign stakeholders, you have your budgets being owned by multiple stakeholders in multiple markets, and overall that can often represent quite small budgets and big expectations from small budgets around, I need to invest $10,000, how are you going to drive me a 10-to-1 ROI? The reality is, probably you're not going to. You can run a campaign that can maybe tell you that you did those things, but the reality is investing $10,000 over a number of months in a small market is very unlikely long-term to shift that needle. And I think that is a conversation that is difficult to have with clients, because there's always that promise of, if we invest $10,000 now, then in the future we're going to be able to do the things that we want to do or should be able to do. And again, there's always finding that balance between what we can do, what we should do, running campaigns, investing in walled gardens that we know seemingly drive low-cost performance metrics, but ultimately aren't doing anything to really reach and connect with consumers in a meaningful way. So is there an appetite? Truly, yes, because I think everybody wants their business to be successful, but ultimately from an APAC perspective with, small budgets, big expectations, and especially in times of economic downturn, needing to drive big results, it's a difficult conversation to have, and I think having the talk and then choosing to walk it sometimes are where we struggle to do that.
Two different things, right?
Two different things.
Yeah. So changing gear for a second, Timmy, question back to you around the success that SCMP have had in building out a bit more of a sophisticated first-party data business has no doubt relied on being able to get users to log in, selling subscriptions on the one hand. How difficult has that been? I mean, we know it's difficult full stop for publishers, but maybe also in a region like APAC where there is probably a strong cultural preference for free content. I mean, there is sort of across the world, that's what the internet has been built on. But has that been a particular challenge for you? And the reason I'm targeting this question in this way is because I'm imagining there's other publishers out there who just won't find it as straightforward to build out that first-party data and that direct relationship. So how have you gone about that? What's stood in your way, and how have you overcome that?
Okay, I think, this is going to be a bit political.
Carry on.
No, I think from a business point of view, I'll never forget the day, I think it was the 10th of August, we knew we were going to launch. From an advertising perspective, we were like, oh wow, okay. Because you just kind of know what impact that's going to have when you go from pretty much not having a wall, which is paid views coming in, to let's go quality. The other side to that is you look at that and you go, oh, wow, people are actually willing to pay to engage with your brand. So it kind of gives you some sense of confidence going, okay, we are actually doing something that people want to engage with. From an advertising perspective, then the hat comes and going, it means I can charge more money because I've not got first-party data, so definitely my value has gone up. And then we go to a world of, again, talking about no more cookies. Then you go, I've got sign-in, therefore retargeting and things like this becomes a lot easier. And then you go back to, okay, now I'm going to get all this data. Now I'm going to get all this, everyone telling me we've got your emails, and what does that mean for compliancy? Which means we then go all the way back to going, who are you? How is the data coming in? Can I actually use it? And it opens a whole conversations you don't really want to have if you're in advertising. Just pretty much, I just want to do my job. But the reality is you kind of have to have those conversations. And for us to men, legal teams, DPOs, trying to understand what the different regions, we are Hong Kong headquartered, but the reality is our biggest audience at the moment sits at the US. So from a global perspective, that is understanding what are the laws in the US, what does GDPR mean for those guys in Europe, and pretty much trying to get to sit down with every team to understand, okay, how are we getting this data in? Can I actually use it? If we're putting it into our CDP, how are we actually making sure it's compliant? And that whole process, I would say, took us a best of 2 years just to try to understand all of that. The good thing for a brand like us, we do have the bandwidth in terms of a size to kind of go, this is the journey we're going to take, we're going to see that through. When you look at what journalism is today, pretty much you can read content on Facebook, on Twitter, you pretty much can find your news on TikTok and those places. And then when you go to, do I trust what I've just read? The reality is we want to build a place where you can trust what you've read. That's not cheap. We've got to pay the people who go out to do all of that stuff. And COVID happened, everyone kind of understood budgets pretty much just got turned off. So as a business, you've got to go, I can't just have one revenue stream. It's not smart. So for us, it was something that needed to happen, something that was scary when it happened. It required a lot of people, a lot of teams. But I still think it's like an ongoing journey where we still have things coming up to make sure that bucket doesn't run dry. How do we keep people always subscribing? How do we keep them sticky? And one of the key words we use today is loyalty, because you don't want someone to subscribe for a month and then they will drop off. So it's how do we make sure they stay on for a long time? And again, from an advertising perspective, the more they do, the more easier my life becomes, because then we now have a lot more to talk about first-party data and more segments.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an example, I suppose, of, walking the walk. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a painful thing to do at the start of the process, but it's got a bigger long-term payoff, which, in a way is the sort of conversations that you've been wanting to have with your brands. We started this by talking about cookie deprecation, and I'm just interested to know, does the pushback on timeline have that much of an impact on the conversations that you've been having, both of you internally within your organisations? I mean, Timmy, you said it was a bit of a blessing in disguise anyway, coming down the line. Madelin, I'm imagining that clients are at all sorts of various stages in their journey of understanding how they might try to reach users in an open internet environment when third-party cookies aren't available anymore. Has it impacted you?
I think the way that most people sees it, and in general the industry sees it, is, oh great, we've got more time, oh great, we can delay, oh we'll just continue doing things as is. But the point is, the continuing to do things as is hasn't really been great for our industry, and continuing to do things that are easy isn't great for performance, for brands, for creativity. You have a look at investment, 80% of investment generally goes into walled gardens, whereas we know that, over 50% of time is spent on the open internet. So by continuing to do things as is, because it's convenient, because we've gotten used to almost getting hooked on the drug of, performance media as it is, I think people are choosing to see it as a delay and as a chance to continue doing things as is, but realistically, we should be excited to draw a line in the sand and to have a new conversation and to fundamentally change the way that we're looking at doing things. So yes, I think people are using it as an extension to buy more time. It's sort of the same thing that happened with GDPR, isn't it? That all of a sudden then it got switched off and nobody knew what to do. So instead of seeing it as an inconvenience or as buying ourselves extra time, we should see it as a really exciting opportunity, I think, for clients, for brands, for vendors to dive into that and to do something new and exciting. Because every other week, we were talking about there's, sensationalized articles talking about 50% of ad dollars are wasted, 25% of investment in programmatic's ineffective. So we know things aren't working, but we're continuing to perpetuate that by continuing to have the same conversation. So cookie deprecation by itself, sure, it can happen today, it can happen tomorrow, who knows when Google's going to push it back to at this point. But why wait for Google to push us to do that when we know that there's a better way we could do things?
Yeah, 100%. And Timmy, you guys obviously have been very front-footed, and probably for lots of other reasons. It's not just cookie deprecation, it's just trying to maximise yield. But is it a conversation at all internally where any other parts of the business, maybe even on the tech side, say, oh, we don't need to worry about this so much, or is it still full steam ahead?
I think for us it's full steam ahead. Not much of a worry. I think we're in a good place now where when we speak to agencies and partners, the idea is we now want to be the first to do things like a data clean room exploration. So there's a lot more opportunities where clients now know, okay, we've got a lot more time, but that means I want to be the first one to do this with you. So from our point is looking at our tech stack to make sure, okay, we've got everything in place, making sure we've got all that compliancy ready to be able to go out to market and achieve all of those. So internally, there's pretty much, I'd say, no panic. Is giving us the opportunity to have conversations that will be put into, I'd say, a year. But we're having those conversations now because you can pretty much start planning, get the brands to understand, okay, if you want to do this, these are steps we've taken. There are a lot of ad tech vendors who now offer solutions that you can go, okay, let's explore. So we've kind of bought ourselves some time to have a lot of conversations with clients and educate them along that way. So I think for us it's been a blessing. You're
using the time wisely by the sounds of things. Can you talk just a little bit, because we're starting to run out of time, talk just a little bit about your tech stack at SCMP, because you've got an interesting proposition, you've definitely been innovating, you've definitely been trying to find some ways to offer, very targeted audience to brands. Can you just say a little bit about what you've put together?
Okay, so I'm going to be salesy. So for us, I think 4 years ago, it was a big call. We kind of looked at what we had. We had third parties, I'm not going to name names, they're still friends. But essentially, from an operational point of view, you're being squeezed. Like, we're pretty much being squeezed in every corner. And from a hat, which is called RevOps, which you have to wear, you kind of go, it's not worth it. So one of the first things we did was, let's make sure we own our own data, which means, sadly, taking everyone off the page from a tag perspective. No more scraping, don't care what your solution is, don't want it. Again, we were lucky because we have an engineering team who go, tell me what you want to do and we can do that for you. And they started building towards that vision in terms of we want to own everything we do. The second thing was, how do we take what now we have as suitability? We had third-party vendors, and for us it was, how do we build that internally? Because we create our own content. We know what we're writing. We know the sentiments behind that. We actually understand the context and the content around that. And so building the first-party data was the first, platform was the first thing we did. The second thing was building what we now call Signal, which is a suitability product that we've built on top of Lighthouse, and then pretty much comes with attention and making sure whatever the brand wants to do and the clients, we can actually do that as one publisher. And the beauty of that for us was because we had the scale, it now became conversations where, hey, you're allowed to work with your third parties as a brand. Like, I'm not Google, I'm not going to mark my own homework. So use your third parties, but then it verifies what we've done to actually tell us our tech actually works. So for us, it's building a one-stop shop in terms of making sure you have everything you need. And everything around cookie deprecation just makes it a lot easier for us to have conversations because we've got a whole robust system to support that.
Ready and prepared. Just on the tech side of the business then, Madeline, are there some conversations that you're having with brands who are really looking to get a bit more experimental with some of the tech solutions that they're using, maybe because they're going after particular metrics and they're trying to either prepare themselves or they're willing to think about a better, more holistic way to deliver their marketing and advertising?
Yeah, absolutely. And tech is everything, and it's helping clients navigate that space of the tech that you should be investing into because it makes sense for your brand. There's so many solutions, and I think we were talking about the, how do you cut out intermediaries? How do you help to streamline that process? How do you help to make sure that dollars are going to the right place? And ultimately, I think there's no right or wrong decision. There's no silver bullet that works for everybody. It's about understanding, what are the needs of your business? How complex is your business? How do you collect data that you can use to enrich your understanding and to add insights? Or how do you use that data to activate campaigns? So from a technology perspective, the role of agencies is very much consultative, of helping to navigate that space, because everybody's out there making claims, everybody's got something to offer, everybody can do everything, it seems, at the moment. So being able to provide an agnostic voice to that to help people navigate that space is what's really important to us. I think the most important thing, and one of the biggest conversations that everybody is having at the moment, is first-party data. How do we collect more of our own data? First party, zero party, how do we work with partners to enrich that? How should we collect that? Where should we store that? Do we activate it? Do we use it for insights? All of that space, and I think that the first-party data piece is probably the biggest conversation that we're having with clients right now that's come a long way in the last 12 months.
Super fascinating. It'd be great to dive into that in more detail, but we're going to have to save that for another panel. We have a panel later this afternoon that's going to be focused on that data piece. I just want to show up the results of our poll before we leave. So has the pushback on cookie deprecation impacted your strategy? No, full steam ahead, 24% of the audience over there with you, Timmy. A bit, we're still in test and learn phase, 62%, and yes, we have other priorities to be more concerned with, 13%. Any views on that?
Look, I think it just comes down to, right, what are the priorities? Every single day, everybody's got something, right? Everybody's got their immediate priorities. So it just comes down to prioritization, what should we be doing when, and the impact that that's going to have long-term, short-term and long-term on the business. So as anybody, you need to make the decisions that are right for you. But ultimately, I think as an industry, yes, we need to fully move away from the conversation around cookies and everything else that has, backed us into a corner on. And the sooner that we can do that, the better for everyone, revenue-wise, creativity-wise, but ultimately in terms of how we're actually able to use media effectively to drive business results.
Yeah. Timmy?
I'd say pretty much bang on. It takes a lot. It requires a lot of investment. You look at, for example, from a publisher, you look at identity, there's so many players out there. Who do I choose? Why do I choose them? Who do I want to work with? I don't want to end up going back to having 7 different identity players. So I think the whole test and learn essentially is kind of spot on, because there's still a lot that needs to be uncovered. You've got Google coming up with the products that works and doesn't work. So there's still a lot of experiments that need to happen. So I think looking at that, I'm like, yeah.
That makes sense.
Relatively fair.
Looks familiar.
Yeah.
Yep, great. Thank you very much, Madeline. Thanks, Timmy. That was a great conversation. Round of applause for my panellists. Thank you very much.